Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Today's video is about unlocking the secrets of the astral dimension. So let's step into the unknown and unlock the secrets. I'm going to show you the destination that lies beyond this realm and how to navigate it safely, and why such a thing would even be desirable to do. So, if you ever wondered if there was more than just the physical realm, certainly if you've done your study, you've heard reference to many other types of dimensions. And in truth, a dimension is another word for a slice of reality that is predominantly governed by one or the other element. So we've got the physical dimension, mainly governed by the quality of earth. We have the etheric dimension, mainly governed by the quality of water. We have the astral dimension, mainly governed by the quality of fire. And then of course we have the mental dimension, which is mainly governed by the quality of air. Now there's a fifth layer, and I suppose that one of the reasons this fifth layer isn't clearly elucidated in the Western mystery tradition is because this mostly comes from the East, and Westerners tend to not understand the origin of their science. The fifth dimension, or the fifth aspect of consciousness living within manifest reality, is the Akash dimension, or the causal plane. And it's in this causal plane that everything that has ever been originates. That's why it's called the causal plane. So we're going to get into this, and to really understand the astral plane, you've got to start from the top. Just like with the Tree of Life, you can't take one Sephiroth and hope to get a clear understanding of it. You've got to look at these things as the whole system that they come from. To take something out of context will almost certainly lead to misunderstanding. It's the same way that people take a piece of a Bible verse to justify something that they're thinking, not realizing that that Bible verse is one line in a whole chapter, and the whole chapter has a message. So to just cherry pick what you want, sure, it may help you win an argument, but it's not going to give you the understanding that you claim to look for. So, I'm happy to see everybody in the chat. Let me move this window closer to myself so that I can read any questions or comments that may be presented. This is going to be an informative discussion, so I hope that you have your thinking cap ready. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the different planes of reality. Understandably so, because there is not much reliable information readily accessible. But if your goal is liberation and an understanding of states of consciousness, you're gonna have to understand what the astral plane is and what it has to do with the whole system. So, before we begin, peace to everybody. The Magical Magician, peace. Moe G, peace. Winter Soldier, what's up, peace. God Black, peace. Azrael Walker, peace. Al Dickey, peace. Koi Sewell, peace, brother. Trinidad Morales, peace. Richard Tracy, peace. Good to see you. Sunshine Chick, peace, peace. Sunshine Chick says, I just walked into the gym. I gotta check the replay. Understood, understood. Nuru, peace. Society Ejects, peace and greetings, my friend. Alright, so let's get to what it is that we're talking about here. I think I've got to update one more thing. There we go. So, if this is information that you'd like to hear, if this is information that suits your fancy, or possibly this is something that you've been studying on your own, go ahead and hit that like button, as the like button helps to notify the YouTube system that this content is worth watching and worth promoting. All right, so as we get started, I want you to think about this. Consider the different states that you embody on a daily basis, on a regular basis. And when I say state, I mean different moods, different mindsets. When you find yourself in a certain mode, right now, take the time to calculate which one of these that you feel on a regular basis. Some people may or may not admit that they have an anger issue. And what that means is every now and then they have a state where they're very irritable and angry and mad. So when they operate through that state, they express that anger in their life. Some people have a state of being very confident, right? And they just feel on top of the world. They know how to do what they do. Some people have a consistent state of depression, sadness. Think about for yourself what type of states you find yourself in on a daily basis. That's going to be very important for how we describe the astral plane. Because if you study the astral plane, you may have heard that the astral plane is the plane of emotions. And we're going to get into what exactly that means, because that's a very vague concept there, that the astral plane is the plane of emotion. What does that mean? Is that the plane of just feelings, right? The astral plane is much more vast than the etheric plane and the physical plane. And if there's only a handful of emotions that a human being can feel, that would mean that the astral plane would have to be much more than just feelings. All right, so one more thing. Jeez Louise. Jeez Louise. Worth the wait, I promise. All right. So it is 6:46. So essentially, when we think about existence, right, we have to consider that at the highest level of existence, consciousness is in a very pure, undiluted, unconditioned state. What does that mean? What that means is that everything that can ever exist is in a single point. There's no differentiation whatsoever. If you study Kabbalah, you may know this as Kether. You may even know this as the Ein Sof Hour, which means infinity. With this particular system that I'm going to use to describe the different planes, the Tattvas, this is described as a Kosh. And this can be symbolized by a black egg. And the notion is that this black egg contains the potential for everything. That means that there's literally nothing excluded from this point. There's nothing outside of this point. So when you think of your highest conception of God, eternity, the highest thing you can think of, this is what Akash represents. So when people talk about the Akashic records, what they're really talking about is a point in outside of space and time where everything exists all at once. There is no time, which means that the beginning, the middle, and the end are all bundled up together. This is the highest state of consciousness that an individual sentient being can perceive. So at that level, there's no time and space. Now what happens is that is the highest vibration, like I said, that individual consciousness can perceive of. So what happens is, for existence to be, that point has to stretch itself out. Now that stretching can be seen as the tree of life. That stretching has been echoed in the system of chakras that we have. But in any case, the stretching out, what happens next is that in order to perceive life at its stretched out state, you have to lower that vibration. So when you slow that vibration down, what you begin to see is the next dimension, which is the mental plane, right? Represented by the air tattwa, or the air element. So what has happened now is that single point, beginning, middle, and end of every potential possibility that there is, since the vibration has slowed down, it has separated just a little bit. So instead of beginning, middle, and end wrapped up together, it's now entered time. And this is where you can see concepts being born, having their lifespan, and fading away. And these are all concepts that were inside of this infinite, boundless egg. So in the mental plane, what we're dealing with is God, or the Akashic level, but slowed down to the point that you can distinguish individual concepts, individual archetypes. So what happens next is when that vibration slows even more, we've got the astral plane. Now, as those individual concepts begin to slow down, they begin to separate even more. So now they're perceived as scenarios, situations, and emotional type of energy surrounding those thoughts and surrounding those concepts. So in fact, it gets a bit more expanded, right? So as we continue to slow the vibration, we now enter into the etheric plane. And this is where the imagination is the substance of reality. And in the etheric plane, this is where you can access those emotions and access those thoughts and access the pure light of eternity, but it can only be done through an even slower aspect of time. So when you daydream, when you visualize, you're taking your consciousness out of the five senses and putting it into this place where you can kind of visualize and grab onto different states and bring them into yourself. When you slow it down even more, the slowest vibrating reality that we can perceive is the physical plane, represented by the earth element. And in this physical plane, that single point of God has been slowed down and spread out so much that we literally have to go through time 1 second, 1 moment. And space has stretched out so much that even though the same life force runs through and governs everything, it perceives itself as separate. If you guys remember what we read from Manly P. Hall's book a few days ago, he said something to the effect of, this is where the illusion is that God thinks that he is 6 billion different people and trillions of different creatures. But that's only because this veil of Maya that covers us, and that veil has created space and time. So, how does this all relate to the astral plane? Just a second here. Where did you go? There you are. So, that is an illustration of the 5 planes. So what does that have to do with anything? Okay, so what happens now is that on each of those planes that were now spread out into different states of existence, the substance of those planes is also at a different vibratory rate. So down here in the physical plane, the vibratory rate is so dense and so slow that we perceive it through separate channels. We see things with our eyes, we hear things with our ears, smell things with our nose. The vibration has now become separated, just like light entering a prism and becoming fractionated. So because of this, we learn to navigate this realm in a very fractionated and separated way. An analogy that I like to think of is the human body is a lot like a glove, and consciousness is the hand that fits into that glove, each finger now going into the finger holes of each of the five senses. But when you sit down to meditate, you withdraw your hand from that glove. The glove is still there, the physical body, but the consciousness and the awareness has now been removed. So here's the thing. As a human individual, you have what's called a personality. And most people think a personality is a very static and solid, immovable kind of thing. Well, that's just how I am. That's just my personality. But in truth, the personality is not that. In truth, the personality can be seen more like a container or a bag. And all the different states that I asked you to think about earlier are what's in that bag. So someone who may be angry often has that state of anger and they place it in that bag. Someone from time to time may be afraid and have a fearful state that they enter into, maybe when they look at conspiracy theories or the news. And when they enter that fearful state, that's how they spend many hours of a day. They put that into the bag. Maybe someone who just likes to relax and be very carefree and not worry about anything. You take that state and you place that into the bag as well. So all these different states that we employ on a daily basis, those together are what we wrap into a bag called personality. The personality is not a static thing. The personality it consists of each one of those different states that we employ on a regular basis. To change your personality is not a different thing. Your personality changes when you begin to tweak the states that compose your daily life. So what happens is that when you lie down and go to sleep, or if you go into deep meditation, you're drawing your consciousness up into a higher plane. Now, by the time you go from the physical plane to the astral plane, the polarities flip upside down. This is what Ophiel taught. This is what Dion Fortune taught. So what actually happens is that in the physical plane, consciousness is squeezed into the awareness of the body, the five senses. Yet on the internal subjective realm, you've got these different states that you're dealing with one at a time. So if you're someone, again, who's very angry, you're going to express your awareness through your five senses based on that angry state, or any state that you employ has a direct effect on how you perceive reality. But when you withdraw that consciousness and go into the astral plane, what happens is that the roles reverse. So now in this astral realm, what used to be individual states that you would only feel one moment at a time, in the astral plane, these states are now individualized entities. So for a person that has anger, sadness, and fear, when you dream, anger, sadness, and fear now are characters in that dream. This is what it means when the astral plane is the emotional reality. The states that you employ on a regular basis exist as individual elementals on this astral plane. As an example, someone who is very much plagued with a victim mentality, what happens is that they enter this state of being a victim, and when life happens to them, they look for someone to come and give them sympathy. So they seek out people deliberately to go along with the program. My life is just so hard, things just aren't working for me, woe is me. And when they find someone to agree with that, when they find someone who says, you've got it so rough, I just don't know how you do it, when they get responses like that, that triggers something inside of them, whether it's serotonin, whether it's dopamine, it doesn't matter. But when a person employs a state and they get the reaction that they need, which is why they employed the state in the first place, that generates a certain type of prana that feeds that astral life form. So this victim mentality is an entity on the astral plane, and it feeds when a human being expresses or allows that entity to move, breathe, and exist on the physical. And just like a cat or a squirrel or a stray dog, what you feed sticks around. So on the other hand, a person who has a savior mentality, who goes out of their way to try to save people and make sure that everyone is taken care of, the same thing is happening with them. When they employ that mentality of being a savior and they go to find someone to save, the person that says, oh, I'm so grateful for you, oh, I'm just so happy that you helped me do this, that, or a third, that triggers something in them. And again, that feeds that state that they've employed. On the astral, the state can be seen and identified as an individual entity. Now, it's nothing to be afraid of, nothing to fight. It's inevitable. Everyone at every time is being fed upon by elemental entities. It's just the way that reality works. The physical plane, the substance is made of tangible things. The Vedics call the physical body the Annamaya kosha, which is the sheath made of food. This is how we survive. The etheric plane is the Pranamaya kosha, the body that is sustained by prana. And likewise on the astral plane, these entities are sustained by emotional exchange. So it's not like you're being fed upon and consumed until you die. It's more like the energy that you generate just from existing is a food source to a certain type of life form. So again, when your consciousness is in the physical body, these astral entities only appear to you as states of consciousness. The state that I'm in right now, this is an astral entity. The state that you're in right now is an astral entity. And when we fulfill the purpose of employing this state, the astral entity gains sustenance. That's just how the tree of life, the chain of command, the food chain works. So understanding that, it starts to make a little bit of sense when you think about the Goetia, or when you think about any grimoire or system of entities. If you notice, these entities are usually explained and expressed in terms of some type of concentrated emotion. You've got entities that'll help with lust and sex. You've got entities that will help with maybe abundance, sometimes greed and gluttony. You've got entities that deal with influence over others. You've got entities that deal with all sorts of things. And these can typically be boiled down to states that people already embody or that they seek to work with. Why else would you choose to work with a spirit unless you're trying to embody some type of state and gain some type of result from that? And of the whole collection of entities, why are there certain ones that you just pass over, gloss over, don't care to work with at all? Because you don't have a connection with that state. There's plenty of spirits in the Goetia that deal with working with crystals and herbs and astrology, and I really don't care to work with those in depth, because those don't appeal to any states that I embody on a regular basis. Likewise, there's tons of spirits that you just pass over, and there's a few that you become very attracted to because they represent something that you already have. There are only so many emotions and experiences that the human being can have. But what makes the astral plane so complex is that when those raw experiences meet with an individual person's ego, now that experience can be expressed in many different ways. The anger deity is going to express itself differently in me and you. And as a matter of fact, it'll express itself in me differently throughout the phases of my life. So right there, we can already have a multiplicity of one type of being. So what does this have to do with astral projection, astral travel, and why is this important? Well, I'll tell you. And by the way, before I continue, let me know if what I'm saying is being received, if this is making any kind of sense, or if this just sounds like something way out there, like this music. Let me know in the chat. And if you haven't already hit the like button, please do so. I think there's a 50% like to viewer ratio right now. Let's get that all the way up. Unless this is not the type of subject matter you want to hear, then I understand completely. Joyce Soul, peace, peace. The God Black, peace. Phoenix Wolfette, peace. MC Maestro, peace, bro. KP, peace. Backyard Garden Journey, peace, peace. Tenebris Via Lucis, peace. Straight Panther, peace, good to see you. Alicia M, peace. Anna Molly, peace. Nuru says persona means a mask or a character in Latin. Absolutely. Yet, when we think about a personality, we make it very, in our head, we make it very constant and solid, but that's simply not the case. Now, here's the thing. In order to move forward with all the stuff that I'm talking about, something individual and solid does have to be developed. And it's not a personality. In fact, it's the realization that the individual does not exist. We'll get to that in just a second. Zito, peace. Welcome, welcome. Kevin Wise, peace, brother. ARV International, peace, peace. All right, so let's keep going. Dub VT, peace. Good to see you. All right, so let's continue. So when we deal with these different realms, all right, I mentioned that the physical plane is made out of physical elements, food and nutrients and things like that. The etheric plane is made out of the imagination. It's made out of the substance that we use to visualize. In the Vedic text, they call it the mind stuff, chitta, right? That's what the etheric plane is made of. The astral plane is made of the type of substance that is created when you embody a state, when you embody an emotion and you express that emotion, and the intent of that emotion is sent out and received and returns. Emotional exchange. Even if you send out emotion and it doesn't return the way that you expect it to, something returns. For example, if you fall in love with somebody and they don't feel the same way about you, now you feel the pain of unrequited love. Well, that is still an emotional exchange, and some entity is being nourished by that. Likewise, if you love someone and they love you back and you have this beautiful thing going, some entity is nourished by that. And that nourishment is expressed through your behavior. The mental plane is composed of individual concepts. Concepts that are at the root of everything else that I just talked about. And then finally, the causal plane is all of that stuff jumbled up into one point. No time, no space. So, now that we've established that each plane is composed of its own substance, meaning the astral plane is not made of particles of dirt or brick or anything that is tangible. In fact, as you raise up on the planes, the vibration speeds up. And when I say vibration, I mean the rate of consciousness. The rate of consciousness down here is extremely slow. That's why everything seems separated. If you were to speed up time, you'll see that everything is really this brown, grayish mush, right? That's what it really looks like. And in fact, that's what the astral plane appears as, because it is a higher vibration of reality. Check. So I'm saying all that to say this. In order to have so-called spiritual advancement, in order to move forward, because this is where this came from. I had a consultation with someone earlier today, and they asked a wonderful question. They said, what do I need to know to advance on the path? What do I need to do to continue to evolve spiritually? And we had a discussion similar to this. On the physical plane, in order to master this plane, you've got to become an individualized human being. Most people are not that. In fact, it's extremely difficult to be an individualized human being because of attachment. Now, the same thing that saves us to evolve us is the very same thing that hinders evolution. What is that? Ahamkara, ego, when it is undeveloped, remember I said that the physical plane is consciousness squeezed into a glove, into the five senses. So consciousness now thinks that it is the thing. It thinks that it can identify what's real by what it sees, hears, smells, tastes, and feels. That's a lie, because all those things are extremely manipulated before it reaches your cognition. So an undeveloped ego, an undeveloped ahamkara, believes that it is the things that it perceives. That's what most people do. Most people think that they are who they say they are. They are how they dress. They are their job. They are their abilities. They are their past actions. They are their situations. People believe that they are the things that they do here. That's simply not true. It's simply not true, because all that can change in the blink of a thought, right? If a giant meteor crashed into this planet, now everyone is out here scrambling for survival. It doesn't matter what you did last week, or who you think you are, or whether you're a politician, Democrat, Republican, what Black Lives Matter, what, none of that stuff will matter once you're reset back into a savage age. So the undeveloped mind believes that it is something, it holds on to something related to the five senses, right? Some people hold on to past achievements that they did. Maybe they graduated or did something in high school. I don't know. A developed ego understands what I had mentioned in the beginning. This is how you evolve past the physical plane. We're going to go through all of them if we have the time. At the higher level, Akash, where everything is jumbled up into one single point. We call that God. We call that whatever highest conception you think. That's the ultimate reality, when it's all together and not separated. You understand? So just look at this. When that black dot is perceived from a low frequency, which is the physical plane, we see things as separate. We see billions of people. But so here's the thing. What we call God, Shiva, Purusha, Brahma, it is so complex that if it were to manifest on the physical plane, one form literally could not encompass everything that it is, right? One form couldn't do it. So what you understand is, no, you're not the stuff. What you actually are is the infinite potential of God. That's what you actually are. So when you say that I am, that's what you're acknowledging and realizing. Because most people, they've heard it before. I am that I am. But what does that mean to you specifically? What does that mean? It's not just a word. And even worse, when some people say I am, they follow that up with something else subconsciously, right? I am. It can't be the physical body. It can't be the race. It can't be the gender. It can't be your bloodline. It can't be anything that is cognizable with the five senses, because every human being and everything came from the single source. So to call yourself a differentiation is a gross misunderstanding. To say that I am is an understanding that literally everything that can be perceived is the same thing. Everything that can be perceived is one thing. When the ahamkara is fully developed, the ego, the I maker, it understands the difference between the separations and the unity. Does that make sense? The fully developed ego on the physical plane understands the distinction. It's about discernment. Discernment is the virtue of Malkuth, the lowest level of the tree. So the first thing you have to do is to learn to separate the identity from the separation and the union. God, Shiva, the Most High, whatever we call it, it's so complex that one form cannot hold the whole thing, which means that whatever form that you are is exactly what slice of God or deity that needs to manifest in this time, in this moment. When you say that I am, that's when you understand that. When the ahamkara, or the divine ego, is fully matured, it understands that what it is already perfect, simply because it is a reflection of the divine. And that's just the physical plane. So getting to the etheric plane, that's the thing. You've got to have an individualized understanding of yourself on that specific plane. So with the etheric plane being the plane that deals with imagination, there has to be an understanding in the imagination realm. Those of you who were with me when we did the inner light activation system, this is exactly what we did. We created an etheric body and we stabilized it, right? I made the metaphor before about playing video games, whether it's Fortnite, Call of Duty, 2K, whatever you play. Your character is in a digital space. And in order to create that digital space, they use you as a point, and you've got the X-axis, the Y-axis, and the Z-axis. If you didn't have that point, you'd literally just be floating around as a part of the environment without a single perspective. So the same thing has to happen on the etheric plane. In order to establish the individualized ego, the ahamkara on the etheric plane, you've got to form what's called a body of light. You have to form a solid point in the imagination so that when you do visualize or daydream or whatever, you're doing it from the perspective of an individual body and not just floating randomly dispersed. You have to concentrate your force on every plane of existence. And again, discernment. You take the discernment that you learned in the physical and take it to the next plane. So now you can discern and distinguish between you and everything else. The astral plane is the same thing. Now, I went through all that before talking about these different states and these different personalities that populate the astral plane. And here's where the flip happens. Because if you notice, there's 5 elements. And in the very center is fire. In the very center is the astral plane. This is where the flip happens. Because either you are sustenance for the astral energy, which most people are, and that's necessary for the ecosystem. It's not a bad thing. You're not fighting a damn demiurge. You're not fighting anybody. There's only one entity. So there's no enemies. There's no boogeyman. There's nobody to fight. There's only one. If you're astral food, if you're food for larvae, elementals, or whatever, it's supposed to be that way. You haven't developed yourself enough to move past that. But once you have developed yourself to move past that, these things now become tools for you to help you evolve. You are fed upon until you stabilize yourself on the astral plane. And again, this is where discernment comes. Now, if the astral plane is composed of all these different states of consciousness, or I should say states of emotions, different feelings, different moods, there's an anger over here, there's a happiness, there's a sadness, there's a horniness over here, there's a hunger, there's a thirst, any type of state that you can perceive of, right? The need to feel unique and special, the need to feel like somebody cares about you, the need to feel like you care about somebody, the need to feel powerful. All these are different entities on the astral plane. Most people, like I said, have a bag called personality, and they take those states, they put them in that bag, and they say, this is me. That's what I'm talking about. If you define yourself by prakriti, you are not conscious yet. You're still asleep. If you define yourself by the things that you're experiencing, you haven't developed enough light to move past that level. So again, if the astral plane is composed of all these different states, and you define yourself by a collection of states, you're actually on a plate. You're actually food. So on the astral plane, you have to distinguish what you are. You have to distinguish who and what you are. And that's when you can employ those states to help you get to your purpose, to help you get to your goal. Instead of being tossed around by emotional ups and downs, you start to develop a level of self-control where you employ these emotions. You become the master instead of the slave. See, most people can't control their emotions. Most people don't have very much discipline at all over how they feel or what they feel. They allow these feelings to overtake them and run them and guide them and rule them. So to develop an astral body, right? To develop an astral body means that you have an individual existence on the astral plane, and you're not tossed around and identified by other astral bodies. So what does that mean? Most people that say that they are astral projecting and astral traveling are actually not. It sounds cool. They're doing something. I'm not saying they're not doing anything, but let's not call it astral because that's not what it is. It's actually etheric. Etheric is the realm of the imagination. Now, the more that you fortify your etheric body, the more that you begin to fortify your astral body. It does take intentional work. And then finally, on the mental plane, to establish an awakened body on the mental plane, again, it's about discernment. You have to be able to distinguish between being a conscious entity, the observer, and then the thoughts that are floating around. See, this is the next layer where people get stuck because we identify ourselves with our thoughts and what's going through our heads. We think that that's who we are. I am what I think. No, those thoughts exist without you. Those thoughts exist without you. Those emotional states exist without you. Without you, there's going to be somebody else to employ those emotional states. Imagination exists without you. How many times have we all had this vision of this great movie, and all of a sudden, somebody else produces it? Or we have this concept of a song, somebody else produces it. Or maybe an idea for a new invention or something like that. And then we see it pop up on our feed. Imagination exists without you. Emotions exist without you. Thoughts exist without you. So for a person to think that they are their thoughts or their emotions or their imagination or even their physical body, because guess what? Earth exists without you. To identify yourself with these things means that you don't know who you are yet. The main command and request of the mystery system is know thyself. Know thyself. You can let culture tell you what to be. You can let your parents tell you what to be. You can let your school system. You can let the church. You can let any other person who doesn't understand anything about reality tell you what to be. But don't expect to gain any kind of light from following others who are also not seeking light. It doesn't work that way. So, how do you astral project? How do you astral travel? You have to solidify an astral body. You have to understand what you are and what you are not. Once you fully do that experientially, not just logically, right? Not just listening to me, but there has to be an experience of that. Once you start getting an experience of that, astral projection becomes easier. Lucid dreaming starts happening more on command, not perfect every time, but you start getting better at it. You should start getting better at it, especially if you're tracking this, right? I'm learning more and more how to go lucid intentionally because of what I'm talking about. I'm not just repeating something that I heard from somebody. This is stuff that I've been studying and practicing on my own. I think I mentioned a few live streams ago, I was able to recognize myself in my dream, and because I saw myself, I became lucid. I was able to do it again and again. After that, I missed it. But there's a common theme here. I am understanding who I am as I sleep and as I dream. I'm recognizing who I am. And in that moment, I become awake. So how do you do this? Meditation is probably the most practical way to do this. I've been talking about all of these books for years now. You should have at least one in your catalog that has a collection of meditation exercises that you can do. People talk about superpowers and wanting to levitate and do fire and all that stuff. Well, guess what? You have to master that on the astral plane before it happens in the physical. It doesn't happen on the physical just because you read cyclomancy and you practice cyclomancy. No, you're practicing cyclomancy so you can do that in the dream. And once you do it in the dream a bunch of times, now you can start making stuff happen in the physical. Do you see how that works? Let me know if this is making sense, man. Grace Fortune Tarot, peace. I'm glad that this is one hell of a download. Venus 888, peace. So this is one of those things that is very clear to me, but when I speak it out loud, I start to realize that there are a lot of people who don't use the same language as me, so maybe I'm talking to myself. I recently started working with some new entities, and I tried some new methods, and these things have been helping me to understand this type of information at a very high level, very quickly. And honestly, if I don't record some of this, then I feel that some of it may get lost to myself. All five levels must be in alignment, right? Once you get your physical body mastered, and when I say mastered, I don't mean like all of a sudden you're this guru. It happens in stages. You're not suddenly there. As you work, it gets easier and easier and easier, right? So when you start to master the physical body, you begin working on the etheric body, and you start mastering that. You start mastering the astral and the mental. Once all five of those bodies are gradually coming into alignment, that unity starts to happen again, right? Awakening from the matrix, that's happening when the levels of your consciousness and unconscious come into alignment. That's awakening the Sushumna. That's awakening that Kundalini serpent power. It's not all about the physical plane. Got nothing to do with eating vegan and semen retention and whatever the hell else they're talking about on the internet. See, this stuff wasn't supposed to be a fad. Never was a fad or a trend. It is now because people are bored and also seeking this information. But the fact of the matter is, when I was here and I fell down here, I left myself a trail of breadcrumbs and said, hey, if you want to wake up, this is what you have to do. You did the same thing. So the fact that it's trendy and popular is only because it's time for you to get back on your shit and get to work. It's not merely simply supposed to be just passing pictures and cute little quotes and collecting books. No, the point is to remember this information and utilize this information. And it ain't for everybody. There's a handful of y'all listening to this message who this is actually for. And you know who you are. Take this stuff seriously. I mean, if you're really about it, put it to work. If you're really about it, put this stuff to the test. Don't just sit here and listen to me and then go do something else. Test what the hell I'm saying in your own way. You may not understand everything that I said, but you understand something. Go put it to work. Go try something. Or at least you got some type of direction or breadcrumbs. Go pick up Dharana Darshan. There's plenty of books, plenty of meditations in there for you to do. Tat Washuddhi. You got countless things to do. Countless. It's not a trend style. It's not a community. It's not like a fun thing that we do on the weekends. You're supposed to get out of here. You're supposed to wake up and get out of here, right? What's the alternative? Trying it again next time. Trying it again next time. And I don't know about you, but I have tried it again, and at this point I'm starting to figure it out. Somebody hears what I'm saying. I can feel that. All right, so look, this is more for you than it is for me because I understand this. This is more for you than it is for me. Tell me in the chat what you derived from this conversation. Tell me what you found useful, or tell me what you're going to do next to solidify this. Or tell me that you didn't get it at all and this was a waste of your time. Let me know. Let me know. As an occultist, as a magus, what should begin to be happening is that your mind is beginning to synthesize different types of information. Listen to what I'm saying. Synthesize. At the causal plane, everything is together, right? When I say synthesize, I mean it's meshed together into one thing. Synthesis, right? As an occultist, your mind should begin to start synthesizing all the information that you receive from anywhere, right? From on the street, from listening to gossip, from watching these kind of videos, reading books. You should be able to find some type of connection between all those things. What's the opposite? The alternative is that you're so earthly that you think that everything is separate. You think that everything is distant from each other and things are just unalike. That's terrestrial thinking. That's NPC thinking. That's earth thinking. Now, if you're a conscious soul, you realize that there are no differences. Guess what? Samsara and nirvana are the same thing. Heaven and hell are the same thing. This prison of earth and liberation is the same thing. It takes maturity to understand what the hell I just said. It takes spiritual maturity to understand that. So as an occultist, you should be starting to develop a mindset of synthesis, of seeing the connection between all these different things. That starts you on the path of actually waking up. You're not woke because you know about some government thing, conspiracy. You're not woke because you know that McDonald's chicken nuggets are made out of some pink goop. You're woke when you realize none of that stuff matters at all. You begin to wake up when you start, when the desires for terrestrial things begin to diminish, right? A lot of people still have desires for external things, right? External things are not going to get you to meet the soul. External things are going to get you addicted to external things. So desire should begin to diminish. Enjoy life, right? I enjoy sparkly things, but I don't make my life about it. I don't care. Enjoy, but understand that when you enjoy things, you're employing a state, right? I know what I'm doing because it engenders a state within me. And those states that I employ on purpose are to get me to a certain place. You see what I'm saying? All this stuff has to be in alignment. You don't have to be an expert in psychology. You don't have to be an expert in anything. You just have to understand what you are and what you are not. When you start doing this, you naturally begin to have more lucid dreams. You naturally begin to start astral projecting more frequently, and you naturally start receiving downloads that are relevant. There's an angle of matter that is horizontal, and there's an angle of consciousness that should be perpendicular. And when those angles meet at a nice clean cross, consciousness is able to penetrate matter, and matter is able to support and sustain consciousness. Perfect bond, perfect unity. But what happens is, consciousness being infinite hits matter at every kind of strange, weird angle. H.P. Lovecraft talked about strange angles. These weird angles give us different interpretations of consciousness mixed with matter. It's all about formulas. So the human being should be a straight angle of consciousness penetrating matter, but instead our angle is skewed. So we have trouble seeing the light because we're seeing it from a strange angle. When you begin to get these bodies into alignment, you straighten that angle, right? And when we talk about awakening, we talk about lining up your kundalini. You line up those chakras so that the Ida and the Pingala, the masculine and the feminine forces, can flow through balanced to the point that they become indistinguishable. And when it's indistinguishable, it's almost like two lenses coming together perfectly so that the light can flow through. So you get your angle straight by bringing your bodies into alignment. You bring your bodies into alignment through non-attachment. This is the same stuff I've been saying for a long time, right? Understanding that you're not defined by anything that you pick up with your five senses. So you should have no desire for those things. At least you should have a reduction in desire. right? There's still stuff I want, but I don't want it as bad as I used to. That's what you're gonna hear yourself say as you actually become more and more enlightened. I don't want stuff as deep as I used to, right? You can still enjoy life, but you're not addicted to life. Once you start to line that up on the physical, you start to line up your etheric body, which is your imagination. What kind of things do you daydream about on a regular basis? And how deeply do you identify with what you daydream, what you fantasize about, what you envision? Think, again, like I said in the beginning of this video, think about your emotional states. What emotional states do you embody on a regular basis? What are you feeling on a regular basis? And is that what you want? Is that going to get you where you're trying to be? And the thoughts, the beliefs. Who do you believe you are? What do you believe you are? All these thoughts and beliefs that are popping in and out of your head, they exist without you. They're not yours. You didn't come up with any of them. So how many of them thoughts do you cling on to and attach to and say, hey, this is me? Once you get all that stuff straight, you straighten up that angle and you allow the pure light, right? This blackness becomes pure light. It'll start opening in small doses, and over time it becomes more and more and more until it's just your natural state. Now you become master of the elements. When we talk about elementals and elements, we're not just talking about rocks and a fire pit and some water and some wind. We're talking about the 4 dimensions of reality, the 4 dimensions of matter. Earth is the physical plane. Water is the etheric plane. When we talk about the fire element, that's the astral plane. All right. So again, I hope that something here was useful. And if not, cool. And when you say that I am, what are you saying? What does that mean? When you say I am, that I am, what comes to mind? Does it make you feel good when you say that? It shouldn't make you feel anything. It should just be what it is, right? Saying I am that I am should be like saying I breathe oxygen, I drink water. It's a natural, right? When you say I'm God, it shouldn't bring a level of pride, because what are you really doing there? That's just fortifying this personality, right? Which is just a container for states. Your personality is just a container for the different states that you employ on a regular basis. So if you say I am that I am God, and you feel a sense of pride and strength, what you're actually doing is using one of those states that you have in your bag that you call a personality, which is being under the influence of astral entities, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the natural chain of life. But consider where you're trying to go, what you're trying to achieve, and is what you're doing useful and appropriate. All right, so I didn't want to make this longer than an hour, and we are reaching 58 minutes. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to type? Lance Benefield, peace. Mentis Sagas, peace. Midnight Miner says, I'm going to meditate. I've been learning a lot, but need to practice more. Indeed, that's a good way to go. Patchwork says, becoming more self-aware so I'm not astral food. A good way to go. And again, man, none of these entities exist. None of these demons or spirits or angels, none of them exist. Nope, they don't exist. That's the biggest secret of them all. What actually exists are these different states that we employ. Now, when we have a grimoire, such as the Goetia, it gives us a nice clean-cut lens for us to focus our awareness on, to channel one of those elemental spirits. That's all it is. Elemental spirits are substance that take form that we give it. So if I want to work with a King Payman, right? Think about this now. I don't know what the hell a King Payman is. All I know is I read in some book that it says he's going to give me confidence and he's going to help me make music. So I'm literally just taking that concept and that shape of a person wearing a crown on a camel, and I'm filling it with the state that I want to employ. And I'm simply using that symbol as a channel for me to fill myself up with that astral entity. None of this stuff exists. It's all a manipulation of prana and energy. And we do so through managing our states and moods and thoughts and behaviors. But if it serves you to believe in these entities as individual creatures, then by all means, whatever works. But it's a certain trick that the occultist knows to be able to play the game, but not fall victim to the game, if you understand what I mean. Drink the wine, but don't get drunk. Tina Otero says, who is Dharana Darshan? Did I spell it right? You spelled it right enough. Go to Amazon.com, type in Dharana Darshan. You'll see a book, black with a dude's face on it. That's it. Don't have to question it. Just get it. And then read it. As much of it as you can. And practice what's in it. Anna Molly says, like, that just confirmed everything from my dream last night. And lots of deja vu today. Not shocked anymore. So, like, bring it. Yes, ma'am. Society Eject says, I'm first going to take my ass upstairs when I get home and get my notebook and write this shit down and do a diagram and see where I'm at and go forward from there. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, all right. Chief Heartbeat says, hey Trav, what was the book with the meditations in it? It's called Dharana Darshan. Check that out. Dharana Darshan. All right. Al-Dicky says that I have to just begin to understand, that I have just begun to understand without holding on and just letting it be. Absolutely. When we talk about non-attachment, that's what we're talking. We're not talking about just, oh, I don't care. We're talking about understanding that thoughts rise and go away. None of them are yours. They exist without you. Feelings rise and go away. None of them are yours. Matter of fact, nothing is yours because there is no you. There's a thing that happens, right? It's like we reach this apex of a pyramid and then it inverts. Then it inverts. So you go with this deep understanding of the thoughts aren't mine, the feelings aren't mine, the body isn't mine because there's no me. And once you reach that point, it crosses over. Because if there's no you, that doesn't mean that you're not alive. What that means is that life is bigger than just you. You go from there is no me to I am everything. Do you understand that? It's like an inversion. I am nothing, I don't exist because I am everything. There's no separation. That's what this represents. There's no separation. When we talk about God, there is no separation. So I keep saying there are no enemies. There's no difference. There's no demons and angels, good guys and bad guys, heaven and hell. There's just consciousness. And matter's a part of consciousness. I am that I am. But again, those aren't just words. That has to be experientially understood. And the best way, the most practical way to experientially understand that is through meditation. Tantric meditation. Get the book Dharana Darshan. Get taught Washuddhi. Get something that allows you to pull your hand of consciousness out of the glove of five senses and just be there. Experience that nothingness without twitching and scratching and getting scared. And when the thoughts pop up in your this is where you practice, because when you're in that moment of stillness and the thoughts rise up in your head, your first instinct is to grab it and dwell on it and follow it. No, let that thought pop up and watch it go back where it came from. And it's going to keep happening. And it's going to keep happening until you begin to expand past that. You can expand so far that the rising and falling of thoughts don't affect you. You don't even pay attention to it. And guess what happens next? Next, you get these rising and fallings of full emotional states. I've seen people just break down into tears during deep meditation. Because you can reach such a state where buried emotions remain that are not even dealt with. You have to even push past that too. Because when you look at it, and you react to it, you're doing the same thing that you do when you're waking up, when you're awake. So the whole point is understanding that what you are is not the thoughts, not the feelings, not the beliefs, none of that stuff. None of that stuff is real. None of that stuff exists. It rises and it goes back to where it came from, the depths of the collective unconscious. Sleeping, dreaming Adam Kadmon, Purusha, the oversoul. Koi Sewell says, the unwritten law cannot be learned. It must be evolved within the spiritual body of this aspiring seeker through right thought, right emotion, and right action. Manly P. Hall. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Corporeal Chaos Consulting. Peace, brother. Peace. How deeply do you identify with those daydreams? What is you? Yes. Good stuff. Good stuff. So it looks like everybody who's responding really has a clear grasp of this information, and that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, so I'm just wrapping up these comments in the chat, and then I'm gonna go back about my business. I feel like cooking something great tonight. Anybody have suggestions? I'm gonna hit the grocery store up. What should I get? What does God eat? Anything that God wants, especially himself, itself, herself. Because there's nothing else. There's nothing else. That's why the Aurora Boreas is the snake symbol eating its own tail, because there's nothing else. It is that it is. There's no other experience outside of this ultimate self, right? There's no one to love and no one to love you. There is just self. No one to fight. See, this is the whole thing about the tree of life. When we talk about Kether as that white point, which then devolves into Hakma, which is symbolized as an old man looking into a mirror or a pond and seeing his reflection, right? Nobody else appeared. Concrete, tangible reality is merely the reflection of consciousness. We see the same thing in Samkhya. Prakriti, Mother Nature, is none other than the reflection of Purusha, just at a lower form, slower vibrating form. So yes, all this is perfect. All this is God, right? Nirvana and samsara are the same thing. Ain't no difference between nirvana and samsara other than the perspective of the individual observer. So either you understand what you are or you do not. And we can tell very easily by what you say and what you believe and how you think. So check yourself. Again, like I said, like, this isn't supposed to be a fad. It's not supposed to be a trend. It's not supposed to be what it has become. It is, but that's only to remind you that there is a way to reclaim what you thought that you lost. I better get off here because I'm gonna keep going. Audi Moore, peace. Oh, I'm like 10 minutes behind. Let me speed up a little bit. That Slaps says, did you do Ophiel's How to Contact the Demiurge? Absolutely. Just YouTube it and you will find it. I did all of them except the Art and Practice of the Occult and the Art and Practice of Talismanic Magic, which I plan on doing after I get the rest of these thoughts out of my head. All right. Wow. Thank you for that donation. I appreciate you. Miss Chris, peace. Good to see you. Eric Jones says, how can you know you're dreaming more than you do so we can practice your astral powers? You're always dreaming. You are asleep. You're always dreaming. The fact that you can dream means that you're still dreaming. The physical plane is a dream. The etheric plane is a dream. The astral plane is a dream. The mental plane is a dream. It's all a dream. In NLP, they say that we are always in a trance. At every given moment, you're in a trance. The difference is you're in a different trance. You're in a trance when you sit down and watch your Netflix and binge it for hours. You're in a trance when you open up that fridge and you just stand there scanning, even though you know what's in there and what's not in there. You're in a trance when you're scrolling on your phone. You're in a trance when you're lying in bed. You're in a trance when you're on the toilet. You're in a trance at all times. You're in a dream at all times. The difference is the depth of the trance or the depth of the dream. So there is no limitation on when you can and cannot practice. The issue is, are you going to find and create the opportunity to practice? That's the issue. Are you going to create the opportunity to practice? You don't need to wait. Do something now. From the perspective of the human, right? Going about your work and your life with your family and whatnot, it's easy to think that these spirits aren't real, figments of the imagination, etc., etc. But from the perspective of Akash, the spirits are just as real as you are. The spirits are a figment of the imagination, just like you are a figment of imagination. So you're not limited to dream. You're not limited to doing a ritual and summoning spirits. It's all things all the time. But it takes an understanding of that. Test it out and see. Mantis Saga says, could you talk a little bit about synchronicity? Well, believe it or not, I did, because I mentioned that as you really start to develop your occultist mind, you want to come into a perspective and a framework of thinking that deals with synthesis, with unity. You want to start seeing the connection of things, because the connection of things is the original state of life. I keep showing this symbol of Akash, this egg. This is where everything that can be, everything that can be at all whatsoever, is wrapped up inside of this black dot. So to experience synchronicity, guess what do you think that would mean? To experience synchronicity would mean that whatever you're believing, I want to say whatever you're doing, but whatever you're believing, whatever framework you've set up for how you experience your life, it seems to be on point with synthesis. So do it more. Yeah, when you start working with this stuff, and when I say start working with this stuff, that beginner period can last for 10 years. So I know you're going to say, oh, I've been doing this, da 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 da. Beginner period, it's not about time, it's about understanding. Initiation has nothing to do with time. It has to do with when it clicks, when it makes sense. So when you're still in that beginning stage, synchronicity is like, oh, that was cool. Oh, wow, that was cool. But as you start getting more and more on this path, you realize that synchronicity is supposed to be the way of life. To the point that you can rely on it, you can bank on it, to where everything that happens is synchronicity. Let me know if that answered your question. All right, let's see. Society ejects. Patchwork says chicken Alfredo. That doesn't sound bad. Maybe something exotic would be nice. Al Dickey says ramen with shredded cheese, tuna, and chili cheese Fritos. I'll be honest, it don't sound bad. Straight Panther says, I think I get it. We kind of had this conversation in a dream. Nice. Matt Brown says, what up, bro? I say go for a rack of lamb with asparagus on the side. I've got asparagus. I've never had rack of lamb. I might try that. Rack of lamb with asparagus. I might try that. Peach ice cream. Peach ice cream for Ophir. All right. Richard Tracy says, still out jogging, but wanted to say this live has been excellent. Awesome, bro. Awesome. MC Maestro says, if you don't understand primatology, you're locked into understanding the clip-off in the hood. And that's the default state for most of Prakriti, is it not? Study Vedic philosophy, study Samkhya. If you care about learning this stuff, you'll benefit yourself by studying one of the most earliest complete sciences of spirituality. You're going to really enjoy that if what you're actually seeking is understanding and not just entertainment. Study Vedic information, study Samkhya. Tina Otero says, a tomahawk steak. What's a tomahawk steak? The name sounds cool. Uh-oh. Young Alchemist says, does the clip-off exist in the astral dimension? The clip-off exists in every dimension. There's a clip-off of the physical plane. There's a clip-off of the etheric plane. There's a clip-off. But here's my question to you. What's the clip-off? I know it's a spooky word, colored in black, but what does that mean? What is a clip-off? Alchemy of Life says, hamburger soup tonight, y'all, with rolls and rice. Hamburger soup. I don't think I've had that either. DRW Isis says, man, they keep jacking me up on the astral plane. I have scratches, soreness. Is this my past or something? Well, the thing to remember is this. Every entity that you see and encounter in your dreams is a personification of one of the states, moods, or experiences that you hold on to that you have in your bag called personality. Every character listen to me, the next time you dream, try your best to remember the character. It doesn't matter what happens in the dream. Remember the characters. Remember the situation, because here's the thing, sometimes the character can express itself as a city. Sometimes it can express itself as a person. Sometimes it can express itself as an interaction between two individuals. The astral plane is fluid. It vibrates faster than the physical plane, so things don't retain form as efficiently as they do in the physical. So don't get fooled by the appearance. But do understand that when you encounter individuals on the astral, these are personifications of your states and your moods and deeply held beliefs, things of that nature. All right. Lou HD says, is synchronicity an energy or a god or something else? Synchronicity is the quality of experiencing oneness, unity, the original state. It's supposed to be synchronistic. It's supposed to. Synchronicity is a sign that you are experiencing a state where things are moving in their proper order. Life is supposed to, like, it's supposed to be like that. That's what I'm saying. Life is supposed to be synchronistic. Everything is supposed to fall in place. That may sound like some fairy tale movie stuff, but I'm telling you, life is supposed to just fall in place. That's what happens when you start getting these bodies into alignment, because the work is being done even without your effort. See, you have to kind of force the wheel to turn when you're just getting started. Just like when you're working out, going to the gym. You have to really drag yourself in there and force yourself to kind of burn them calories. But once you get into the routine, it's like clockwork. Now you're doing it. Now you're doing it. The same thing happens with this information here. It's supposed to get to a point where that synchronicity wheel is turning so much that you literally, you wake up without your alarm clock. You think about somebody before they call or visit. If you need something, you get it just as soon as you found out that you need it. If there's something that might have turned out to be harmful for you, it leaves your presence. All this stuff begins to happen, and people call it magic, and oh, look at God, He's looking out for me. Your life is supposed to be that way. That's called living in alignment, and it continues to accelerate. All right, there's a lot more stuff, because as I talk about this, there's other stuff that comes to mind, and I'm supposed to just make this an hour, and it's already been an hour 20 minutes. I gotta get up out of here before the grocery store closes. I think I'm running out of time. It might have to be DoorDash. Mushroom fajitas and homemade tortillas tonight. That sounds good. Straight Panther says, if you cook a rack of lamb, make sure to cover the exposed rib bone tip with tinfoil. Keeps it from burning. Thank you. All right, if the grocery store is still open, then I will try the rack of lamb. Yeah. Laia369 says, I saw a snake. What does that mean besides the obvious? Well, you've got to look at your personal library of correspondences. What does a snake mean to you? I can't tell you what a snake means to you. What does a snake mean to you? I know what this means to me, clearly. So if I see it on some girl's t-shirt, if I see a balloon in the grocery store, if I see this, I know what it symbolizes to me. You want to have a library of correspondence for reality. This is how reality speaks to you, by knowing what it's saying. And if you don't know, maybe it's time to begin to build that library. All right, time to go, time to go. Time to go, time to go. Oh yeah, Serious Suit 888. My bad, bro. I've got to send you that book. I completely forgot. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and let me tell you, that was the best thing I've done in a long time. I didn't realize that I kind of fell off on my study and my work because I've been on my damn phone so much. But when I put that thing on Do Not Disturb, yeah, I've been back on my grind, and it's good. I don't know if I'll take it off. Sunshine Chick says, make sure you season lamb very generously. Okay. Young Alchemist says, Clipoth is the negative side of polarity. From what I understand, it's the negative aspect of everything. Close, but not exactly. Negative and positive exist together as a balance. So in every Sephiroth and in every walk of life, you're going to find negative, positive. What does negative mean? Negative doesn't mean bad. Negative in occult terms means that it's something that is taking and maybe even dragging it down to the world of form. Positive means it's something that is giving, pushing, it's force, right? Negative means form, positive means force. There's no such thing as good and evil in the occult, right? So positive and negative means form and force. Masculine and feminine means force and form, okay? So when we're dealing with the Clipoth, what we're actually dealing with, to keep it short, you're dealing with data that is no longer necessary, data that is no longer useful or appropriate for what's going on right now. So when you're dealing with the clip auth, that doesn't mean scary hell bad dimension. It means data that is useless. A good example is, you know, and say in primitive cultures, if somebody stole from someone else, they chop off your hands, right? That was the law and everybody abided by it. Now we accelerate into the future where we are now. If somebody steals, if you get caught, well, you serve time or whatever, you go to jail. It's no longer useful and appropriate in this country to cut somebody's hands off. That's no longer useful and appropriate. So that punishment now has entered the clip off. In America, I'm sure they still do it in Africa and the Middle East. They cut off more in the Middle East. In front of a live audience. Prakriti is something else, isn't she? I think her favorite sustenance is blood. But then again, maybe Prakriti is so savage because that's what it takes to shock Purusha to wake his ass up, right? Think about how savage nature is. Nature is extremely savage. This ain't no pretty place to live, y'all. Nature's it's something savage going on right now. Savage is the natural state of existence. But I don't think it's because nature's evil. I don't think it's because the demiurge is evil and is trying to punish us. No. I think that since the ultimate purpose is liberation from Prakriti, then every single thing that happens is for liberation from Prakriti. So the fact that Komodo dragons eat the baby out of the womb while the mother's still kicking, and every other animal does similar things, it's more than likely because the consciousness that's being tortured is realizing, I don't like this. I need to make this stop somehow. There ain't no better way to wake somebody up than pain. Spicy take, huh? Alright, let me go. Let me go. Again, I hope that this was informative. It's always a lot of fun. And, you know, I enjoy being in this state. And I enjoy being able to share some of what I received. And I appreciate you sharing with me. I think I'm gonna have lamb if Publix ain't closed. Sino says, hey Travis, any documentary recommendations before you end the live? The last documentary I saw, you probably won't be able to find. This documentary about prison life. These guys smuggled cameras in and recorded everything. It was ugly, but I had to really dig for that. Other than that, no, I don't know any documentaries. I don't watch TV like that. I really don't. Stray Panther says, use rosemary mint leaves if you can and get them thyme. All right, I got garlic, thyme, and rosemary. I don't have mint. MC Maestro says, what Egyptians used to clean their beehole is content for the clip-off. What did Egyptians use to clean their beehole? Ay, ay, ay. All right, guys. Have a great night. Jesus, Lord, have mercy. I suppose tomorrow we will finish reading Sacred Magic of the Kabbalah, Part 2, where he's talking about the numbers. I'm in a mood to go live, so tomorrow we'll finish up Part 2 of this. I think we're on number 6, so tune in, 8 o'clock, we'll do it. And if you haven't already, grab a copy of my ebook. And, oh, not that. Here we go. Yeah. So if you haven't already, grab a copy of my ebook. If you have, please leave a comment on what you thought about it. I say comment specifically because that way, if you don't mind, I can screenshot it. DRW ISIS. So, fear is real. No, excuse me, threat is real. But fear is a reaction to a threat. You shouldn't be afraid to go to sleep. To be honest, there's nothing but you. There's nothing but you. There's no entities, demons trying to get you. This is you. And the main part about this whole thing is non-attachment. To understand that the things that you're avoiding is still you. And the things that you feel might be a threat is still you. Alright, but I'm leaving now. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I appreciate you all. I love you guys. Peace.